discuss his current photography exhibition celebrating Global Earth Day. So I'm sure everyone here already knows David, and they know him as a prominent businessman and social entrepreneur. After all, he helped build more than a dozen successful technology companies, which employ more than 15,000 people worldwide. His career has also included extensive public service in science, arts, conservation, and public policy. He served on the faculty of Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government and the advisory board of the Center for Public Leadership. He was a founding director of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum, chair emeritus of the Jackson Laboratory, treasurer and trustee emeritus of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and he's been a global leader in science-based conservation of nature as a trustee of the National Park Foundation, as founding chair of the Sargasso Sea Alliance and Aspen High Seas Initiative, as a patron of nature to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, as a member of Ocean Elders, and as a founder of Second Century Stewardship for America's National Parks. David has served on the board of U.S.-Israel Science and Technology Commission, Maine Medical Center, Hurricane Island, Outward Bound, the Scientific Advisory Board of Discovery Communications and Curiosity Stream. He's a National Fellow of the Explorers Club, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Leadership Council of the Service Year Alliance, and advisory councils of Just Capital, Polaris Venture Partners, Arcturus Impact Fund, Sustainable Harvest International, the Telluride Science and Research Center, and Nautilus Media. There's more, but we can stop there. It's quite a list. David's been awarded honorary degrees by Colby, Bates, Maine College of Art, the University of New England, and the University of Southern Maine. And I think, as all of you know, David and his family have funded the Shaw Sculpture Park at the Portland Museum of Art. So you undoubtedly noticed, aside from the technology companies, a couple of topics that kept coming up in that very impressive list of David's accomplishments and achievements. And those two topics are art and nature. And that's why we're so excited to have this show, which marries those two passions of David's. And so now I'm going to turn it over to David Shaw. Thank you for being here.
Thanks everyone for being here tonight. I've done IPOs before, but I've never, this is my first IPD, initial artist presentation. So I'm excited about that. So this exhibition came to be via a discussion a year or so ago talking about the importance of Earth Day as one of the most celebrated holidays in the world. And and then suddenly I was frankly in the high deserts of Morocco when I got a note from Bruce and others saying, we're ready for this presentation, let's get it going. And so I'm really honored to do this. And I thought, again, because the focus is on Earth Day, I thought I would start off with a film where you still have to listen to me, but I'm the narrator of the film in that case. So I have to roll the film, don't I? Just over 50 years ago, I was entering college when an astonishing event provided a game-changing perspective on life for me and my contemporaries.
3, 2, 1, all engine running. Liftoff. We have
the photos that Apollo 11 astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin captured during their historic moon landing in July 1969 showed us for the first time images of Earth from space. A blue planet full of life, the only known habitable planet in a universe with billions of galaxies. Inspired by those photographs, as well as recent environmental calamities and books such as Silent Spring, over 20 million Americans took to the streets on April 22, 1970. They marched in support of newly declared Earth Day to raise awareness about the fragile state of our planet. Today, Earth Day is one of the world's largest secular holidays, mobilizing over 1 billion people per year. And it's a shared celebration with my birthday. For me, those images and events 50 years ago have been enduring sources of inspiration for stewardship of planet Earth. Inspiration to explore the planet's landscapes and seascapes, to be immersed in the beauty and elegant complexity of nature, to learn how the miracle of life has shaped our planet, and how we are part of that miracle. The power and majesty of our natural world seems vast and even infinite, but it is in fact finite and fragile. The interface between nature and human society is full of formidable challenges and escalating conflicts, with potentially devastating and unanticipated consequences on an exponential scale. This includes understanding of pandemic disease risks caused by human environmental incursions and disruptions. Scientific studies compellingly show that action is urgently needed to address daunting challenges to the future habitability of our planet. Today, it is vital to fully understand how a skyrocketing population of nearly 8 billion people with high consumption cultures is impacting the natural world that supports life on Earth. Human ingenuity has helped us meet great challenges before. We have explored the deepest realms of our oceans, the outer reaches of our solar system. We have cured diseases, decoded the language of life, and harnessed the power of quantum physics, advanced chemistry, and electromagnetic forces to benefit society for sustainable energy and other needs. The COVID-19 global epidemic must serve as a wake-up call about the fragility of our well-being and the astounding interdependencies of human societies around the world. The coronavirus crisis presents yet another test of human ingenuity, human nature, and global cooperation. Emerging inspirational responses to this crisis demonstrate our capacity to meet great challenges individually and collectively. Half a century ago, we saw our small blue planet from space for the first time and awakened to the urgent need to protect it, to be wise stewards of our fragile ecosystem, Spaceship Earth. This anniversary of Earth Day is an opportunity for reflection, action, and gratitude to recognize both our successes and the daunting challenges that lie ahead, and to be grateful to those among us who devote themselves to our collective well-being and who recognize that we are all in this together as a global community. It's an honor to be associated with people and organizations that tackle these challenges in the spirit captured by Abraham Lincoln when he said, "The best way to predict the future is to create it."
Happy Earth Day, everyone!
It's an honor, starting in 1970, to co-celebrate my birthday with Earth Day, but it's also a responsibility. So I've taken it on myself since 1970 to have this co-celebration theme, and it's had a big impact on my life, which could have been much different. For example, today's the summer solstice. So is anyone born today? Okay, so we might be talking, instead of about an Earth Day theme for this, would be a solstice theme, but I did a little bit of homework and I found out that today is not only World Motorcycle Day, which we could be celebrating, but the solstice, June 21st, is also World Dog Party Day. So my life could have been so much different. On a different day, we'd be talking about dogs. Anyway, something. There we go. National Dog Party Day. Not World Dog Party Day, National Dog Party Day. Okay, so I'm very happy to have my photography exhibited here. I'm not a professional photographer, but I had a goal for this exhibit, which was to portray this amazingly interesting and challenging juxtaposition of both beauty, natural beauty of the earth, but also extraordinary challenges. And so I think it would be easy to look at some of my photography and see the beauty. I think it's a little bit harder to see the challenges and the ominous threats. So as an activist for a decade or more, I've used photography and media to try to tell stories and harness the power of modern media to support my advocacy. And a lot of that photography is on exhibit here, but almost all of my photography is done in the context of filmmaking. I've made more than 200 short films, and if you want rainy day entertainment, over on the side here, there's a QR code. Oops, it must be later, okay. But there's a QR code that can get you to these films, but I've interspersed some films in the midst of this. My opinion is the greatest failure of our generation has been adequate stewardship of the natural world. And I think we have that to live with. There's lots of hope, but there's a lot of bad news, and thankfully a lot of action being taken. So in the exhibit next door, I grouped my photos thematically. And it may not be immediately obvious, but a lot of people notice this photo, which is a beautiful photo in Rwanda of the Virunga volcanoes. So it is a beautiful place, but what's not obvious just looking at that photo is beyond being a place of amazing natural beauty, it's the home of the last remaining mountain gorillas on planet Earth. There were thousands or maybe tens of thousands of these animals, and just a few years ago, the number got down to 200. And so that beautiful place is also a habitat for a species that's nearly gone extinct. And I think everybody knows we're living in a world where there's thousands and thousands of species extinctions happening during our time. So I wanted to show this juxtaposition of natural beauty, but also animals that the not so beautiful picture that sits behind that beautiful photography. So here we go again. I made a visit to these gorillas. High in the dense forests of remote volcanic landscapes in East Africa live some of our planet's most celebrated, remarkable, and critically endangered creatures. An estimated population of 1,000 remaining mountain gorillas roam through a UNESCO World Heritage Conservation Region that spans several thousand miles across the countries of Rwanda, Uganda, and Congo. These great apes are Earth's largest primates and the closest relatives to humans, with a very high level of genetic similarity. I traveled to the region in 2018 to satisfy an enduring desire to observe these amazing and imperiled animals in the wild. While public perception of gorillas as monsters has been fostered by films like King Kong, my curiosity was driven by a growing body of research conducted by scientists including George Schaller, Diane Fossey, and others. In his seminal book, Year of the Gorilla, George Schaller wrote that the first non-native sighting of gorillas apparently occurred just 150 years ago, when Franco-American explorer Paul de Chaillu searched for alleged man-like monsters and observed several lowland gorillas in the wild. Years later, early in the 20th century, mountain gorilla observations were documented by Explorers Club president Karl Egli and German army officer Friedrich von Behring. This resulted in the scientific designation of these creatures as a newly identified subspecies. Du Chaillu and others that followed him killed gorillas and sent specimens to Western museums and to societies funding their expeditions. Suddenly, creatures that had previously been obscure to most of the world now captured broad public attention, and this created a significant museum and zoo market for gorillas. Recognizing the need for protection, Albert National Park, now known as Virunga National Park, was established as a reserve in 1925. Yet poaching and human intrusion, including civil wars, continued to decimate gorilla populations to a low point of just several hundred animals. In 1967, American zoologist Diane Fossey began to spearhead conservation efforts from a research station now known as Karasoke. Fossey was murdered in 1985, and her remarkable story was told in the film Gorillas in the Mist. We were well aware of challenges facing mountain gorillas upon arrival at park headquarters, and we were excited to get underway as we clambered through farms and small villages before ascending through the lush landscapes of the Virunga volcanoes. Our guides briefed us on the park, which includes 8 major volcanoes that reach heights of over 10,000 feet. While most are dormant, there have been some significant eruptions in the past century, as recently as 2010, due to shifting tectonic plates in the Rift Valley. For several hours, we hiked steadily upward through tropical forests in dense brush, sometimes cutting a path with machetes. At an altitude of more than 6,000 feet, and after repeated warnings that there's no guarantee of seeing these creatures, I was becoming apprehensive about our prospects. But then the mood of our guides changed markedly, and we were told that a gorilla family was likely nearby. Our lead guide, Francois, began vocalizing, intended to send a friendly message to nearby gorillas. We strained for a glimpse of gorillas in the dense vegetation around us, perhaps a moving branch or a fleeting shadow. As we impatiently scanned the landscape, I became aware of a crackling sound in dense vegetation only yards away from me. And then the massive head of a silverback gorilla emerged.
This group is Adasha group. Aggressive group?
Even after trying to imagine this moment many times, I was not prepared for the reality of seeing such a magnificent animal in the wild. The features of his expressive face created a sense of kinship, and I found myself wanting to connect, to communicate, somehow to establish rapport. Yet I was wary of holding eye contact, knowing that some animals can react badly to staring, taking that as a challenge. Soon we found ourselves in the midst of a large family of gorillas known as the Agasha group, including a mother reclining lazily, alert yet utterly relaxed, and cuddling 2 mischievous youngsters. We were captivated by their majestic, polished faces, large teeth, and shaggy blue-black fur. The silverback, named Santo, projected a sense of quiet dignity, power, and responsibility, a master of his domain as he munched on wild celery and other foods.
ingagi iyo nzi ni sabyinyo buri. This one is the name is Sano. Sano is the number 1 silver. Is the number 2. Number 1 is the name of the group Agasha. Ahubwo ziho ko zifashe mu mutwe.
On arrival at our lodge, I was unexpectedly introduced to Dr. Michael Cranfield, Africa Director of Gorilla Doctors, an organization that provides veterinary services to gorillas in Volcanoes National Park.
Yeah, people often ask me how we treat wild gorillas. They are habituated, which means that they're not aggressive towards people and they're not afraid of people. And every animal is identified by its nose print to an individual name. And so the trackers and guides see every habituated individual daily. And if there's an issue, then they call us and we go up. And if it's life-threatening or human-induced, then we will provide an intervention, which can be as simple as delivering an antibiotic for a respiratory issue, or it can be as complex as anesthetizing multiple animals to be able to do either surgery or to get diagnostic samples to help us treat them.
Dr. Mike explained that his work has benefited significantly from innovative products and services from IDEX Laboratories, a company that I founded in the 1980s.
So mountain gorillas are a success story. And they're a success story because of the very extensive tourism industry, which helps support the communities around the park. So there's a very positive feeling towards the gorillas, and it brings money to support other wildlife causes in the park. And then there's a very strong anti-poaching patrol so that they stop illegal activities. And then lastly, the veterinary care is responsible for 50% of the growth, which is 4% a year, which is astounding, actually. It's as fast as the human population is growing worldwide. Nagash is a favorite because it's got roughly about 18 individuals in it, and there's always lots of babies and lots of activities. And I think one of the most charming things about the gorillas is watching the mothers and the babies interact. There's just such a tremendous tenderness there.
The following day, we returned to the national park to observe golden monkeys, a charismatic species uniquely found in the Varenga volcanic mountains. Our guide, Bernice, explained that we would spend our time with the Kabatwa monkey group, consisting of more than 100 individuals.
And mostly, as you see, they're not eating much because they're very selective. And the favorite food of them is bamboo. But anyway, they feed on about 100 species of plants. And in bamboo, if it's a bamboo shoot season, that's when you see them mostly on the ground because they're trying to get shoots. And if it's not, then they try to pick the fresh leaves on the top of the bamboo. So that's why you see them now on top of bamboo. And also they try to mix with other plants. And once they feed on bamboo shoots, because it's rich in hydrocarbonate, in sugar, they become hyperactive. They act weirdly, same as the gorillas. So sometimes we say, okay, gorillas have been drunk, they got alcohol, but it's actually not alcohol, it's just sugar.
Congratulations to the park rangers, gorilla doctors, and others whose efforts have protected these creatures and the special places that they inhabit.
So I hope that narrative helps put some depth and reveal a lot more about the significance of these photos. The next thing I'll talk about is another one of the very beautiful places on Earth is the Arctic and the Antarctic. And when you go to these places, like the ice in the Antarctic is just spectacularly beautiful, all of the different colors of blue and white, but it masks the fact that we're having a dire impact on these ecosystems. It's not too late, but we need to think of things like Earth Day as a wake-up call to be sure that we do something, that we act now, because it's an urgent issue. So in the next row, there's a grouping of photographs, this grouping of photographs that shows some of these amazing places and some creatures, the Greenland icebergs, there's actually one that's backlit in the other room, the Greenland huskies, this Arctic polar bear. These are somewhat rare musk oxens from the Arctic. Sometimes we might think that the Arctic is just a giant ice sheet, but this is what Somerset Island in the Arctic looks like right now. You feel like you're in Utah. And so let me just put a little bit of a narrative behind those photos as well.
The remote Arctic region of planet Earth consists largely of a vast icy ocean surrounded by dramatic frozen landscapes. It is a place of breathtaking natural beauty, enchanting wildlife, and high adventure. Unlike Antarctica, the Arctic has been inhabited by humans for thousands of years. For centuries, explorers have undertaken expeditions through grueling Arctic conditions in search of treasure, trade routes, and new territories. Expeditions first reached the North Pole a little more than a century ago. The Arctic has recently emerged on the world stage quite prominently, due largely to the effects of climate change. With a warming rate estimated at twice that of the rest of the planet, there is widespread concern about the implications of such dramatic change for a region once so formidably encrusted in vast expanses of polar ice. Sea ice has been declining steadily, reducing sunlight reflection, impacting wildlife habitats, and opening new commercial opportunities, including traffic across the Northwest Passage. Thawing ancient permafrost has begun to transform landscapes into mud and silt, with implications that are not fully understood, including the release of climate-warming carbon. Conflict looms among nations, with commercial and national security interests in ever more accessible Arctic regions. Enthralled by the Arctic and these changes, we traveled to Somerset Island at 74 north latitude for a first-hand experience. Each summer, more than 1,000 migrating beluga whales congregate in the warm, shallow waters of Cunningham Inlet on Somerset Island in the Canadian Arctic. We were very fortunate to witness this festive gathering of white whales, including darker-skinned calves. We watched huge, shaggy musk oxen roaming through vast landscapes. These distinctive creatures are native to the Arctic and are preyed upon by wolves. Our group saw an example of this during our visit. Polar bears are perhaps the most iconic creatures of the Arctic, and it was a breathtaking experience to see these massive animals on Somerset Island. They live primarily on sea ice, and their habitat is increasingly threatened by climate change. While polar bears primarily prey on seals, we saw signs of one bear feeding on kelp.
Looking behind that beauty, we see some challenges, and many people are doing things to address these challenges. I think it's important that Earth Day recognize both the beauty and the challenges. Next thing. Okay, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about oceans. Next door, there's a grouping of photos from these amazing places in the world. Swan Island, Palmyra Atoll, Palau, which is an amazing island country, and it's whether you're a scuba diver or you just appreciate this from the surface, it's another world. Oceans are another world, and it's such a treat to live on what as far as we know is the only watery planet. So that beauty, though, masks very serious declining of ocean health, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well.
Tiny Palmyra Atoll, a national marine monument located 1,000 miles south of Hawaii, is one of our planet's most remarkable and diverse wildlife refuge areas. I visited Palmyra with the Nature Conservancy and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who have jointly managed this remote 5-square-mile refuge since its acquisition in the year 2000. En route to Palmyra, our first sight of land was a thin strip of sand, Kingman Reef, that rises just several feet above sea level from ocean depths of more than 2 miles. Palmyra's peak elevation is just 30 feet, and we're reminded of the fragility of these landscapes over the planet's lifespan of 4.5 billion years. Unlike some larger Pacific islands, it appears that Palmyra was never settled.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, splash.
Today, Palmyra's reefs support a vast array of wildlife, including predators such as sharks and barracuda, to thousands of other species such as manta rays and turtles, swarms of fusiliers, jacks, butterfly and damselfish, wrasses, parrotfish, rare giant clams, and many others. The marine refuge is home to more than 100 species of coral, many times the number found in the Caribbean Sea. Palmyra's pristine ecosystems were dramatically disrupted soon after Pearl Harbor was attacked in 1941, and the United States plunged into World War II. The island was transformed into a naval base with a runway long enough to accommodate large aircraft. Palmyra's brief use as a military base had a devastating impact on its ecosystems. Recent restoration has made it a magical place to observe the natural world and the ability to restore ecosystems disrupted by human activity. The eradication of non-native rats has contributed to a resurgence of tropical forest seabirds and invertebrates. A recovering population of large Pisonia trees sometimes rise to heights of 100 feet amidst lush vegetation supported by heavy rainfall. Nutrients from this once again vibrant terrestrial ecosystem support the vitality of Palmyra marine life. The world's largest invertebrates, rare coconut crabs, roam the island along with other invertebrates such as hermit crabs. Palmyra is teeming with a vast array of seabirds, supported by restoration efforts over several decades. The refuge is managed by a small team operating in modest facilities powered largely by solar panels and wind power. Congratulations to the Nature Conservancy and the Fish and Wildlife Service for their important work, including scientific studies to understand how Palmyra can serve as a model for environmental sustainability around the world.
So I also included here some photos from beautiful Maine landscapes, and you can see the Prutt's Neck Cliff Walk, Carabasset River, Acadia Park, and some of these amazing creatures. These terns travel thousands of miles every year to nest on Stratton Island in Scarborough, and these waves are on in front of the home studio, and it's beautiful photos. But again, looking behind the photos, there's a narrative that's challenging beyond simply the beauty. And what else do I have?
I have traveled around the world to experience wonders of nature, and I'm grateful for those amazing experiences. I'm also very fortunate to live in a place where there are wonders of nature in my backyard.
Some of these are dependably present, such as beautiful landscapes and seascapes, tidal changes, sunsets, winter storms, and resident wildlife. Seasonally, this neighborhood comes alive with migrating fish and birds, including visiting songbirds and raptors. Among the most remarkable of the bird migrations is the journey of several species of terns over thousands of miles to nest on nearby Stratton Island. Beyond these, we sometimes have unexpected visitors. As schools of bayfish travel up the coast every year, these migrations are joined by larger predators such as striped bass, tuna, and sharks. And on rare occasions, sightings of whales are reported at sea nearby. On just 2 memorable occasions, I've been treated to close encounters with whales just a few steps from my home.
Okay, I think I'll race through some of these things. There's some great photos. The photos of waves, you might notice, look almost painted in some cases, and so I worked pretty hard to see if I could come up with editing mechanisms and editing practices that would make these waves look more interesting. It turns out photographing waves is not easy. I'm not going to talk about Africa. Obviously, Africa is a major wildlife and endangered habitat. Do we have time to talk about Bhutan? Maybe. So there's a grouping of photos in here in the next room about Bhutan and Tibet, and I think we have time for this. I'll just show a short video about that puts some meaning, puts a narrative behind some of the significance of these photos.
Bhutan is a small Buddhist kingdom sandwiched in high mountains between India and Tibet. The country has remained surprisingly isolated from the world for many centuries, and tourism is relatively recent. In 2006, we traveled to Bhutan to experience its unique culture and to traverse the country's famous week-long high mountain trek around sacred Mount Jomolhari. After a short stay in the capital of Thimphu, we began our trek on an important holiday, Blessed Rainy Day, and we were soon experiencing the magic of Bhutanese landscapes. Our first day of hiking brought us to the famous Tiger's Nest Monastery, and then higher to an elevation of more than 8,000 feet. Over the next days, we trekked on ancient pathways through remote settlements, beautiful valleys, vast pine and rhododendron forests, alpine meadows, high mountain passes, and wild, desolate landscapes. Along the way, there were many opportunities to experience distinctive aspects of the country's well-preserved culture. There was much discussion in our group of Bhutan's Buddhist culture and the country's focus on enhancing the happiness of its people. we were told that Buddhism in Bhutan focuses on 7 different types of happiness: amusement, delight at meeting a challenge, relief, excitement, awe and wonder, sensory pleasures, and calm peacefulness. Our group had long discussions about this as we hiked through amazing landscapes, and a common worry was that economic development in foreign cultures may represent a significant threat to the happiness that Bhutan seeks to preserve through its ancient traditions. In recognition of this, the country's king frequently speaks out about the need to emphasize the values of kindness, equality, and humanity while pursuing economic growth. The special character of Bhutan was on the mind of the 4th king of Bhutan when he ascended to the throne in 1972 at the age of 17. Faced with the challenge of leading his country to a better future, he was dissatisfied with the prevalent development models that tended to measure progress in economic terms via increases in gross domestic product, or GDP. Influenced by the Buddhist focus on happiness, he sought ways to navigate a journey to better well-being in the modern world by protecting and preserving the country's cultural and spiritual wealth.
Sure it is. It cooks now.
This resulted in 1972 with coining of the term gross national happiness in a declaration that, quote, gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product. The concept of a priority focus on the measurement of happiness implies that sustainable development should take a holistic approach towards notions of progress and give equal importance to non-economic aspects of well-being. Via its Gross National Happiness, or GNH Index, Bhutan has sought to create a measurement tool that could be useful for policy making and create policy incentives for government, NGOs, and businesses of Bhutan to increase GNH, Gross National Happiness. Today, Bhutan's Gross National Happiness Index includes 4 pillars: good governance, sustainable socio-economic development, cultural preservation, and environmental conservation. Within these, GDH measures happiness via 9 domains: psychological well-being, health, education, time use, cultural diversity and resilience, good governance, community vitality, ecological diversity and resilience, and living standards. Of course, the pervasive importance of seeking human happiness is an ancient concept. 2,400 years ago, Aristotle noted that, quote, happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. But the Bhutanese concept of gross national happiness and the GNH index captured the imagination of others far beyond its borders. In 2011, The United Nations unanimously adopted a General Assembly resolution introduced by Bhutan with support from 68 member states, calling for a holistic approach to development aimed at promoting sustainable happiness and well-being. Resolution 65/309 in 2011 states this: it recognizes that the gross domestic product indicator was not designed to and does not adequately reflect the happiness and well-being of people in a country. The resolution invites member states to pursue the elaboration of additional measures that better capture the importance of the pursuit of happiness and well-being in development with a view to guiding their public policies. We have Bhutan to thank for the fact that maps are now produced to show the gross national happiness index in countries of the world, including this one.
I want to talk about this last work of art. For 4 decades, a group that started with hundreds and is now thousands collaboratively created this kind of local work of art that we call IDEX Laboratories. And it was the work, I know we tend to think of business as not art, but I think of it as some of the most artful things I've ever done. And so it's the work of a bunch of dedicated, brave, innovative souls to use modern technology to create a better world. So we are next week celebrating our 40th anniversary. Can I answer any questions?
When do we leave? When do we leave?
When do we leave? On this next trip? Where are we going? Let me just ask you, again, I've never been a professional photographer. I haven't done this is my first photography show, but to me, capturing the complexity of a message is something, just simply in a photograph is something I need to work on. I find video to be very helpful in doing it, but I find it hard to convey the complexity of looking at beautiful scenes, yet knowing that there's a deeper and more important message there. But I'm working on it.
You did very well.
Thanks, Linda.
David, you mentioned dual purpose in your birthday, birthday. So I'm wondering if you have a custom or something you do on Earth Day other than eat cake.
It isn't a Earth Day thing for me. It's more when in 1970 I was in college when that happened, and as the film said, it wasn't simply designating the day was just the tip of the iceberg. It was landing on the moon. It was seeing Earth from space and all that, and so it fundamentally changed my view of how I wanted to spend my life. So it's a interesting coincidence that my birthday was picked for Earth Day. Like I said, it could have been a dog party. So for me, it's a more pervasive thing than simply celebrating on one day. I already said this in this narrative, but I think the greatest failure of our generation is to underestimate the impact that all of the amazing things that we accomplish as a civilization have had such a deep and pervasive impact on nature, and there's no time to lose in changing that. So I think about that every day.
David, at what age did you pick up your first camera? And how did it...
My brownie Starlight. let me see. Pretty young. But I didn't get into it until it became digital. Until when photography became digital, I got more involved. Because I love, I'm not a darkroom type person. I didn't have those kinds of skills. And I love the editing process. I would never think of like showing or keeping a photo that I haven't edited somehow to improve it. So digital editing has made all the difference for me. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
And you really put that slide up about the art of happiness. I might call the art of happiness that you maybe studying in the time. But were you able to bring, say, that art of happiness to also your business life? And would you say you can create a happiness culture in the work world as well?
Yes, I think so. I really feel blessed to have discovered that the business world can be much different than I thought it was as a kid. I thought it was drab and about making money and everybody playing their roles and so forth. And the way I've experienced it, it's nothing like that. It's a tribal, highly fulfilling, ownership-oriented, passionate experience. And the nice thing is, first you want that, but it also creates better businesses. You attract very different kind of people. The hardest thing is to keep that. One of the difficult things in human society is about growth. Success is often about growth. Bigger cities, more cars, bigger companies. If you run a company, people just want to know how is it going to grow because it actually impacts your fulfillment in your job too if it's growing. But the other side of that is growth is also the enemy of maintaining that beautiful tribal experience every day. And so in these things that are measured for success in business or in society, it is also the biggest challenge. And no one's really, I think it's been very hard to figure that out. At IDEX, what I did, and I've done this in other companies, is to keep breaking the company into individual business units so that you still kept the feeling that you were part of something small and you were really, you had high responsibility for that versus lost in your arms. That doesn't always work. But I maintaining a soulful, thinking of business as a place to feed your soul by creating amazing value for customers. Mike Cranfield, the gorilla, he's coming to visit me next week. And I wrote up he's the guy in Rwanda. And I walked into this lodge not knowing anybody or anything, and they said, Dr. Mike wants to meet you, and I thought I was in some kind of, I thought they thought I had the measles or something, I didn't know. And so I walked in and I said, what's the problem? What's the problem, Dr. Mike? And he said, I've always wanted to meet you. And the thing about it, lots of people can say this about their organizations, I think, but I'm happy to say this about a place like that. People don't say, we kind of like your products. Mike came running across the room and hugged me and said, you transform our world, you understand. Veterinary medicine has been transformed forever, and we couldn't live without you. And business can be like that. It's a choice. Yeah.
I really appreciate your optimism and when you're saying it's not too late. So I'm curious what gives you hope?
A lot of things actually. I think the recognition, first of all, the recognition that some things needs to change. is the starting point. You have to care. You have to know and you have to care. One of the great things of the times that we live in, and there's so many examples, and I'm looking at you a little bit, in agriculture or in oceans or whatever. Sometimes humanity does things that they don't understand have negative consequences. And you simply don't have the knowledge. I don't know, did people have the knowledge that when they were shooting buffalo out the window of trains going out west in the mid-19th century, did they know that there were only so many buffalo or whatever? We now live in a world where we know. Our ability to know is astounding. Like in agriculture, we didn't know that there was such a thing as the microbiome, right? We didn't know what made soil rich, right? We didn't know that even humans, we didn't know that humans are more, we have 1,000 times more bacteria in our bodies than mammalian cells. And when the ability to make things better starts with knowing, it starts with knowledge. Right now is a pivotal point for oceans, for example. Deep, dark oceans, we've never known what's there. Think of all the stories about the dangers that lurk in oceans and all that, and we simply didn't know. We now do know. We can see the oceans, and we can see that species are in trouble, that the ocean's warming, that it's acidifying, and that knowledge is being put to use. I work a lot on oceans and have led the effort to protect millions, not tens of millions of square miles of oceans across the planet. And on March 4th, the United Nations adopted language to protect all of the high seas of the world, which is more than 2/3, maybe more than 3/4 of the habitat of the living biosphere of the planet. And so they, and then just within the last week, many countries have ratified, have signaled that they will ratify that treaty. That was unthinkable a couple of decades ago. We didn't know. Now we do. And of course, it happens with healthcare too. Look at our knowledge of genetics and our knowledge of biology now gives us the tools to understand ways to improve our health. And the next revolution in healthcare is so-called precision medicine. It's enabled by the ability for all of us to sequence our genomes, find out what our genomes tell us about our health. And that was, it was only, we didn't know what DNA was in 1950. We didn't sequence the first genome until 2000, and that cost $100 million. You can sequence a genome now for $1,000. And so for me, hope is related to knowledge, armed with knowledge, caring, and then caring turning that